Welcome everybody back to Midweek Meetings, episode number 14. We are getting close to the end of the regular season. I am KnockdownNico with the camera alongside Pr3ssix.
What's up?
We have a lot to discuss today. We're going to recap some games to start off with. Then we got some very spicy headlines, some big headlines, from some of the games this week, and some headlines from earlier in this week that we missed as well. But we're going to first start out by recapping some of these games. The first one I want to recap is Steelers versus Bengals. I mean, the Bengals defense just needs to be demolished and completely restarted.
Yeah, the Bengals defense is terrible. They have one of the best offenses in the NFL with one of the worst defenses in the NFL. So it's just bad looks for the Bengals everywhere. So yeah, not great looks for the Bengals, but I think at this point their playoff hopes are pretty slim. They would really need to just win out and hope other teams lose, which is very unlikely. So unfortunate for the Bengals this year. But they have next season to look forward to. They should spend all their draft capital on the defensive side of the ball, in my opinion, and I think they'll be a better team next year. And Pittsburgh, I gotta comment on Pittsburgh since we're talking about the game here. Pittsburgh, pretty good, and I consider Pittsburgh one of the best teams in the AFC, honestly. They're a very well-rounded team. The defense leads to points. The offense just capitalizes off the defense. They play very complementary football, and it is leading to success in Pittsburgh. I like what they're doing there. And they have a chance to make a playoff run this year.
I forget what the exact stat was, but I think when the Bengals have scored 38, it's either 35 or 38 points this season, they're like 0-3 or 0-4 now. So like it's low-key kind of ridiculous, the fact that they can put up this many points and the defense just can't get a stop. And it's just like that you're not going to be able to win games if you're putting up 38 points and then your defense can't stop them. I don't know. Joe Burrow and that offense is doing literally everything. They put up 38 points. They did have 3 turnovers this game against Pittsburgh, but I mean, 38 points, Joe Burrow threw for 3 touchdowns. They had a defensive interception as well for a touchdown. The Bengals, you feel like that should be enough, but I mean, this defense for Cincinnati just can't get anything going, and it's just, like you said, if I'm the GM, outside of signing some free agents, it's just straight defense. You gotta just up that defensive, because on paper they look like a solid defense. Like they got Trey Hendrickson, Sam Hubbard, Logan Wilson. Their safeties or corners are, on paper decent. But I don't know what it is, if it's just chemistry or, something else. But they are just not clicking on defense, and it's showing, especially in these high-scoring games where it seems like they should win, but they can't. Pittsburgh, though, they're looking good. Like you said, one of the best teams in the AFC. Looking at their schedule, this is going to be the test. These next 3 to 4 games is going to be the real test. They play Cleveland again, who they lost to 2 weeks ago, although this game is in Pittsburgh. But then they play at Philadelphia, at Baltimore, which we'll get to that game after this. And then they play at home against Kansas City. So I feel like these next couple of games for Pittsburgh, even though they've looked really good so far, these next couple of games are going to be the deciding factor on if they can potentially get a 1 seed, but truly to see how good this team is overall. Because there's times where the defense steps up, there's times where the offense steps up as well, but for the most part, they haven't played the greatest of teams on their schedule. So it's going to be a very interesting next couple of weeks for Pittsburgh. The next game I want to go over is the Eagles versus the Ravens.
That was a very interesting game. I think those two teams are very big competitors in their respective conferences. Eagles are on a roll. They're probably the hottest team in the NFL right now. And the Ravens, they've kind of been slacking, but I think they'll figure it out and get their team together. Um, I mean, I think the biggest surprise here is how good the Eagles have been as of late. They kind of looked mid towards the beginning of the year, but they're kind of figuring it out, even amidst all the injuries that have been happening and players rotating in and out for that team. But their defense, I think, is really improving, and I think that is helping them play good football, and they will definitely be a team to look out for in the NFC.
I think the Eagles are a complete flip of where they were last year. Last year they were good, probably around the same record, but around this time they slowly they just lost a bunch of games. And I feel like we're at a complete flip of where they are. They're on a roll right now. We'll have to see, these next couple of games, the end of the season, how it does impact, see if they can keep this roll going. I don't know off the top of my head, but I want to say, maybe this week or it might be next week, depending on if the Commanders win or not. But I think they can potentially wrap up this division and win the title within the next week or two, depending on if the Commanders lose. But Saquon Barkley, another 100-yard game. I mean, I feel like, especially if he eclipses 2,000 yards rushing this season, he has to win MVP. I don't see how he doesn't. He's first in carries, first in yards, and he's tied for third in touchdowns. Along with that, he has, he's only got like 200 receiving yards, but I mean, 1,400 on the ground. He's projected as of right now, this projection for over 2,100 yards on the ground, which would be insane. So, I mean, if Saquon Barkley's rolling, I think I said this last week or the week before, Jalen Hurts, he just needs to be a game manager, doesn't need to, do a lot. Like this game, he only threw 118 yards, 11 and 19. So if they can control the game with Saquon Barkley, it makes it so much easier for this Eagles team. And for the Ravens, I saw the stat. I don't remember where I saw it, or who made the stat, but it was in their. I think they've lost their combined games by a total of 22 points, and Justin Tucker has missed a total of 22 points. So Justin Tucker might be washed. Well, that's the conversation, but I don't know. Like coming around to the end of the season, especially this game coming up against Pittsburgh when they do play, I just like Justin Tucker. He's going to need to get back into prime Justin Tucker. I don't know how much they're going to be able to go through this postseason, with missing crucial kicks, especially, in close games like this game where they essentially lost by five points. Justin Tucker missed a PAT, and I think he missed 2 field goals as well. So, I mean, that's the difference in this game, essentially. Our last game we're going to go over is the game from yesterday, Monday Night Football, Browns versus the Broncos.
Hey man, that was a great game to watch. Jameis Winston looks like prime Jameis Winston. 3 interceptions and 4 touchdowns. Just a crazy game. The Broncos played well overall, very complimentary football, and the Browns, I mean, really it just came down to Jameis Winston throwing two pick sixes. That was the difference in this game. So, you know, Browns, I mean, their season was already probably over anyways, but I think it's definitely chalked up now. I think the Browns are just should just be having fun playing Jameis Winston the rest of the season and just entertaining the whole league. The Broncos, on the other hand, they have a legit chance to make the playoffs. I said this coming into the season, and most people didn't believe me. So, you know, Bo Nix is balling out there. Their defense is insanely good, and yeah, I like the Broncos in the playoffs here. They're my dark horse.
I can't find. I saw something earlier. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but I thought it was Jameis Winston was like one of like he's top two for like most for having like over 450 like passing yards in a game. I don't remember the exact stat, but he's like second behind like Peyton Manning or some legend like that. But I mean, this is just a Jameis Winston stat line. I mean, he threw six touchdowns. Two were to the other team, but I mean, almost 500 yards, four touchdowns. But I mean, Jameis Winston, we knew he could ball out. His problem was, the turnovers, which clearly we saw in this game. Three interceptions, and this game was still relatively close. Bo Nix had a good game as well. Two interceptions, though. I think he is slowly becoming the favorite for Offensive Rookie of the Year over Jane Daniels. Also, Jerry Jeudy with a, legacy game against his former team. Like, if you had Jerry Jeudy on your bench in fantasy, I kind of feel bad because you probably would have won if you started him. But I mean, this game was wild. We had two pick sixes, and then we had, a 93-yard pass from Bo Nix, and then a 70-yard pass from Jameis for a touchdown. Like, this game was crazy. It was out of hand, and I mean, yeah, the Broncos win this game. It keeps them in the hunt in the playoffs. They get a bye week this week, so we'll see where they are if the Chargers win this week or they lose this week. But look, the AFC West, there's potential. Three teams can get in to the playoffs from the AFC West, which I honestly don't think a lot of people were expecting. I think a lot of people were expecting, maybe three teams from the AFC, potentially maybe three teams from the AFC North to be in the conversation as well. But I mean, three teams potentially from the AFC West getting in was not on anybody's radar. Those are all the games we're going to recap for today. We're going to move on to our headlines. This first one, this dropped earlier in the week. I think it was the day after we did our show last week because we did it on a Monday. But Daniel Jones has officially signed with the Minnesota Vikings.
Yep, Daniel Jones. I'm assuming he's gonna back up Sam Darnold in Minnesota. This move, I don't think it's a league changer. I just glad for Daniel Jones. He got back on a team. He basically flipped his record from 2-9 to 9-2. So, good move from him in that in that sense. So, um, yep, Daniel Jones. Maybe he gets a shot next year. Or if Sam Darnold gets injured, we could definitely see him come in. Imagine Sam Darnold gets injured and then Daniel Jones leads the Minnesota Vikings to a deep playoff run. That would be headlines for days. So, you know, we'll see what Daniel Jones does in Minnesota. I'm not expecting much, but maybe he sees some action here or there.
No, I don't think he plays this season outside, maybe a QB kneel if it's a blowout. But we'll see if a change of scenery is what Daniel Jones needed from the New York Giants. Obviously, Sam Darnold has been good this year. I think he signed a 1-year contract with Minnesota, so he's definitely going to be looking for a big payday this offseason, whether it's with Minnesota or whether it's with another team. We will have to see. We will have to see. But like you said, he goes from a team that was out of the playoffs pretty much to a team that's very well in contention for a deep playoff run. It'd be funny if the Vikings win the Super Bowl, Daniel Jones gets a Super Bowl ring. That would be absolutely hilarious and just a slap in the face to Giants fans. But, I mean, we'll see. I think it's just going to be a question of what the Vikings decide to do in the offseason. Do they go ahead, maybe re-sign Sam Darnold, or do they say in Daniel Jones we trust? But that is to be determined. Our next big headline is the Bears fire their head coach, Matt Eberflus, which we didn't recap the game, but the ending, the time management at the end of that Detroit-Chicago game was awful. That pretty much led to the firing of this head coach.
Yeah, me and my family were watching that game, and even people who knew not much about football were yelling for Chicago to call timeout, and it didn't happen. It was just a weird sequence of events. I mean, I don't know how that happens. That can't happen, and I think that's why Eberflus got fired. I think it was just the icing on the cake for him there. And the Bears, it looks like they're falling into the same cycle that they've been stuck in for years now. They drafted Mitch Trubisky, coach got fired after the season. Drafted Fields, coach got fired. Drafted Caleb Williams, coach got fired. And it seems like the Bears just cannot get it together. They either need to find a good coach or find a good quarterback. They might have a good quarterback on their hands if they learn how to use him. And hopefully, I mean, they had Shane Waldron, he's gone. They had Eberflus, he's gone. So they kind of have an opportunity to create a whole new scheme, and I think that would definitely help out Caleb Williams in the long run. And they need to implement it quickly. They're looking at the brink of being eliminated from the playoffs, so probably not going to be a playoff team this year. After a 4-2 start, they dropped to 4-8, and it's just been a rough season for Chicago. They might end up being a top 10 pick depending on what happens the rest of the season, but I think it's time to chalk it up, get Caleb some pieces in the offseason, get him a good head coach, maybe get Ben Johnson from Detroit or something like that. I think that would definitely help Caleb Williams if Ben Johnson went to Chicago. That'd probably be my favorite. Any team looking for a coach, I would pick Ben Johnson, but that's besides the point. Chicago needs a new coach, and they need to get Caleb Williams prepped and ready for next year.
Yeah, we'll see what they do. I don't remember who the name of the interim head coach is off the top of my head, but yeah, I mean they had a timeout and they chose not to take a timeout in that situation, and it almost seemed like they were trying to go for the win, which I mean I don't see a problem with that, but you leave a timeout on the board with even a potential to tie the game to bring it into overtime, and you botch that, and then the last play is I think Caleb Williams threw it into like double coverage or triple coverage on Rome Odunze, and even if he caught it, I think he would have been short as well. So I mean, just poor clock management, and then he goes and says I wouldn't have done anything different. Like, yeah, I mean, they fired him. We'll see how it goes for the rest of the season for the Bears. They still got a tough schedule. I feel like they may win like one game, maybe two games the rest of the season, but when they fired Shane Waldron, that offense got significantly better. They were using their stars more. They were giving DJ Moore a lot more throws down the field as well. Just a lot more usage of their star players. And, we'll have to see how the interim head coach does. And, maybe he does good. Maybe he wins some games. They decide to keep him, or maybe they go out and hire a head coach. We'll see if Ben Johnson actually wants to leave Detroit. He didn't last time. Maybe he will this time. But, yeah, they just need a head coach. I don't think Eberflus was it really, even when Justin Fields was there. So, maybe this is the turning point for Bears fans. Bears fans were so happy when this happened. I think everyone knew it was coming, though, as soon as that game ended, especially with how it was. He was getting fired, and when it officially was announced, everybody rejoiced. But, yeah, maybe. Also, funny point that I will say, he said he was going to be coaching next week, and he's not coaching next week, Matt Eberflus. Next topic we're going to go over is the Trevor Lawrence injury. Azeez Al-Shaair suspended for 3 games, although the Texans did say, or I don't know if it was the Texans or him personally said, they are going to attempt to appeal this.
Yeah, that hit was pretty bad on Trevor Lawrence. There's a lot of controversy on whether that's the defender's fault or the QB's fault. I've seen opinions from both ways, but in my opinion, it's gotta, at the end of the day, it is the defender's fault. That hit was not clean, clearly. I believe his suspension is 3 games. Correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah,
but
it's 3.
yeah, so 3 games for that hit. I think that's fair. I don't think their appeal's gonna get anything done. He's had kind of a dirty history in general. If you go back and look, he's famous for choking out Tom Brady. So, while Tom Brady was on the Bucks, so I mean, this guy has kind of that reputation. He kind of reminds me of a Vontaze Burfict from back in the day. Um, I don't know, kind of just the same vibe. But yeah, not a great hit. I think that just shows how the Jaguars season has gone for them. They've been absolutely terrible, and they couldn't seem to get anything going. And it's unfortunate injury for Trevor Lawrence. I hope he recovers and is able to play on the top of his game again.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence, I think, is done for the year. I don't see how he's not. I mean, there's like 4 games left. So, yeah, I think Trevor Lawrence out for the year. I personally think, he should have got suspended for the rest of the year, including the playoffs if they made it. But maybe that's a little overkill. I do feel like I've seen it both ways, like you said. Some people saying, maybe he doesn't slide late or he slid too late. Maybe. I feel like this is a defender's, though. You can clearly see in the replay, especially, even if the hit was not intentional, he leads with his forearm as well. So I think that's part of it as well. And like you said, he has a history of, just being a dirty player as well. I don't think this appeal happens. I'm going to be very surprised as well if they even reduce the suspension appeal, because, that happened. He gets into a fight. Then he tries to get into another fight in the end zone. And then I don't know if he was, and then, the fans were throwing stuff at him as he was leaving the stadium, and he was jawing at the fans and stuff. So I don't think this even gets appealed or even gets reduced. Maybe if he doesn't try to fight and then yap at the fans, maybe it gets reduced a little bit, but I don't think so. I think it was a dirty hit, in my opinion. It says here he will lose about $256,000 if his 3-game suspension is upheld. I think also the the game suspension is because he's a repeat offender and a repeat offender this season. He got fined earlier this year for a late hit on Tony Pollard out of bounds, and when he punched Roshan Johnson on the sideline as well. Those are about 11, just a little over 11 grand per fine. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess you have to defend your player, but I just don't see. I feel like that was pretty blatant. So we'll have to see how the Texans defense does without him. I think he was one of their better players on defense. So, we'll have to see how the Texans do without him until then. All right, our final headline actually is going to be Christian McCaffrey has been struck by the Madden curse again. He's out for the season with I think it was a PCL strain or something, if I'm not mistaken, or a sprain. And also they put Jordan Mason on injured reserve as well.
Yeah, a big loss for the 49ers, obviously. It's a very unfortunate situation for McCaffrey. Watching the game, that injury looked pretty brutal. Non-contact injuries are always a bad sign. And he never really got going this season after returning from that tendonitis he had or whatever in his Achilles. So hopefully he can get healthy for next season. He's kind of had an injury history over his career in the NFL, and I'd like to see him come back and hopefully make a full recovery. Christian McCaffrey is a very talented player, and the Niners will definitely miss him. And the Niners are also going to miss Jordan Mason, who carried them in the wake of Christian McCaffrey's first injury. And now they turn to Isaac Guerendo, I'm assuming,
Yes.
who seems like a pretty good rookie. But at the end of the day, I mean, you lost your top two running backs. So that's just a big blow to the team. It definitely makes their playoff chances worse. And I mean, this team is just injured all over the place, and they've been in pretty bad situations this whole year.
Yeah, I feel like this is like a kind of a same situation like with the Dallas Cowboys. They're just injured, so it's kind of just a chalked year. But I do think the Niners window is closing, for a Super Bowl as well. They got there last year, they lost, but I mean, the players, like a lot of their key players are getting older. They're gonna have to pay some people. I think Brock Purdy's contract is either up this year or next year, so he's gonna be looking for a payday as well. But yeah, McCaffrey, people are saying it could be the Madden curse. People are saying it's the fantasy 1-1 pick curse now. So, I saw a stat somewhere, the past couple of years, the number one overall pick in fantasy, like the majority, hasn't played for like more than 10 games in the season. So maybe that's a new curse that's coming on. But yeah, just unfortunate injury for Christian McCaffrey, being that he was out for the majority of this season anyway with those Achilles injuries. And then Jordan Mason as well, who played really good in place of Christian McCaffrey, but he just a high ankle sprain as well in the same game. So he's going to be out on IR as well. McCaffrey is done for the year. I don't know about Jordan Mason. I think he might be able to come back for the last season. I don't know, though. It says he most likely will be out for the rest of the season as well. So, yeah, they're going to have Isaac Guerendo, the rookie. They also brought up Patrick Taylor Jr. from the practice squad, and they did sign as well today, I think it was, Israel Abanikanda from the New York Jets, who waived him, I think it was during the season. So, we'll have to see how they do. I think Guerendo has been, pretty, solid, as an RB2. So he's going to probably get the bulk of the carries. I don't know how much, experience Patrick Taylor Jr. has at all. And then Israel Abanikanda. I know he played a little bit with the Jets last year. I don't know. I think he was more of like that third or fourth running back. So we will just have to see how they do. This team is so injured, though. It's just a chalk season. Unless they somehow play amazing and a lot of stuff falls their way, I do not see them, getting to, I guess, 500 or being over 500 this season. And I don't see them as well making the playoffs. So definitely a disappointing season for the Niners overall. And, Christian McCaffrey, and you could say it was a bad season depending on how your fantasy went if you drafted McCaffrey as well, because that's, for McCaffrey to play a couple games fantasy-wise for you, that's it. And he didn't really do, anything extraordinary. Not the greatest. Those are all our headlines we are going to go over this week, at least the major ones as well. We are going to move on to now our predictions for week 14. I cooked this week. I think I went 12-2 or 14-2. I don't know.
I went 12-4, so I'm assuming you went 14-2.
Yeah, I went 14-2. I should have went 15-1. I don't really know why I chose the Titans, but that's a story for another day. But we have this week, week 14, we got some teams on buys. I want to say this is going to be the last week with teams on bye weeks, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I believe it is.
Yeah, I think it is. So, yeah, it is. So we got Denver, Indy, Annapolis, New England, Washington, Baltimore, and Houston on bye weeks this week. So those are some pretty big teams on bye week. So we'll have to see how everything shapes out. But we're going to move on to week 14 predictions. Thursday night football, potentially the game of the week as well. Green Bay at Detroit.
I'm taking the Green Bay Packers. I know I'm a Packers fan, but I do think they have a legit chance to win. Detroit has a lot of injuries right now, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I think the Packers definitely have the advantage when it comes to injuries. And if you look at last season, the Green Bay Packers beat Detroit at Ford Field and lost at Lambeau. So I'm kind of expecting the same thing here. They already lost at Lambeau earlier this year, and I think they will win in Detroit. So give me the Green Bay Packers. This would be a big win for them, and it definitely shows that they could contend if they win this game.
I'm taking the Detroit Lions. I know Detroit's a little banged up, and they barely squeaked past Chicago, but Detroit is still rolling. They're still, without a doubt, the best team in the NFC. And I mean, we look at this game earlier at Lambeau. Jordan Love did not throw a touchdown pass. He threw an interception. I think he'll throw a touchdown pass this week, and I think he'll also throw an interception as well. But this is going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a little more high scoring than last time these two teams played. It was 24-14, but I mean, these teams, there's no real advantage schedule-wise. They both played on Thursday night last week. So this is going to be a big game, though. If Detroit wins this game, they're going to pretty much be in the catbird seat, I want to say, for the 1 seed, potentially. And then if Green Bay doesn't win this, if Green Bay loses this, they're going to be probably 1 game up on Washington. But it's going to be a big game for both teams. It's going to be a very big game for both teams. But I think Detroit, that game against Chicago is a little bit of a wake-up call. They're 5-1 at home as well. So I'm taking Detroit. Up next, we have Jacksonville at Tennessee.
I'm taking the Tennessee Titans. They didn't look terrible against Washington, and the Jaguars are without Trevor Lawrence for this game, so I think the Titans have a really good chance to win this game. It's in Tennessee. Not that that matters much, but I think this is just a game that the Titans will win. Will Levis will get it done. Um, yeah, that's about all I got. Give me Tennessee.
I'm taking the Titans. Will Levis has been playing good these past couple weeks, passing wise. And, it's a divisional game. So this could be a little, iffy. But the last division opponent they played Houston, who is significantly better than Jacksonville. They beat Houston. They scored a lot of points against Houston. This team, one of the best or one of the better pass defenses in the league as well. And they're going up against Mac Jones, essentially, who, it's Mac Jones. This is a backup quarterback. So I think, there's going to be a little bit of a struggle as well. They're going to have to get either Tank Bigsby or Trevor Etienne going. Or I'm sorry, Travis Etienne. But I don't think that's going to happen. This defense, even though they did give up a lot of points to Washington, this defense is still pretty stingy, and I think they're going to pull it out, especially with a quote-unquote backup quarterback for Jacksonville. Up next, we have the New York Jets at Miami.
I'm taking the Miami Dolphins. The Jets season is basically scratched now. Too many question marks in New York. And the Dolphins, they still have something to play for here. They're sitting at 5-7 in the hunt for a wild card spot in the AFC. And they didn't look great in Green Bay, but it was too cold for Tua. And they're playing in Miami this week against New York. And so it shouldn't be too cold for them. So I expect the Dolphins to win this game through the air, on the ground. I think they'll be able to get it done. And I think the big story in this game is going to be their defense. I think their defense will be able to shut down the New York Jets, and that's how they're going to win this game. Give me Miami.
I'm taking Miami. I think Breece Hall is going to have a good game this game. But look, Aaron Rodgers, I think before that loss to Seattle was 75-0 when having a 14-point lead or something in the first quarter. I don't remember what the exact stat was, but he was 75-0 and then he lost. The Jets didn't score at all in the second half, and I'm pretty sure they got all three of their touchdowns off of, or they got two of their touchdowns, I'm pretty sure, off of fumbles on a kickoff. So, outside of that, Rodgers, 185 yards passing on 39 attempts last week. Not the greatest. I think Miami, it is in Miami, like you said. The warm weather plays good for them. They're going to run all over this team. And it's going to be, I wouldn't say it's going to be a blowout. I think it's going to be semi-close. But I think Breece Hall is going to have a big game, and that's going to be about the only highlight for the Jets. Give me Miami. Up next, we have Atlanta at Minnesota.
Atlanta has looked awful as of late. They're on a losing streak, and they're no longer in control of the NFC South. Give me the Minnesota Vikings. They had a pretty close game with Arizona, but Arizona's kind of an underrated team, and I think Minnesota will be able to get it done against Atlanta. They got Justin Jefferson involved again last week, and I think that really helped them out a lot. And I think they're going to be able to do it again this week against Atlanta. It's in Minnesota, so little revenge game for Kirk Cousins, but I don't think it's really going to matter. Vikings should be able to take care of business here.
I'm taking the Vikings. I think this game's going to be a little bit of a shootout. I know the Falcons have been struggling. They haven't scored more than 17 points since their win against Dallas. But I think, look, Kirk Cousins last week, 4 interceptions. That was literally the difference. Literally the difference in this game. The Chargers didn't put up a whole lot of points. Herbert only had 147 passing yards against that Atlanta defense. The Chargers, without J.K. Dobbins, didn't look as dominant in the run game. Younghoe Koo, I think, missed a field goal as well. So, yeah, I mean, that loss against the Chargers was all on Kirk Cousins. 4 interceptions. I think he bounces back, but I don't think it's enough to, go up against Minnesota. This is going to be a high scoring game for both teams, but I'm taking Minnesota here. Up next, we have New Orleans at the New York Giants.
I'm taking the New Orleans Saints. The New York Giants, in my opinion, are the worst team in football. Even with Drew Lock at the helm, they were not able to get much done on Thanksgiving. So I like New Orleans. I think their offense is just better, and I think their defense will be able to handle the New York Giants, who have one of the worst offenses in the NFL. Um, yeah, just give me the Saints. Call it Ravs.
I'm taking the Saints. Alvin Kamara is going to have a big game, especially with Taysom Hill out for the rest of the season. It wouldn't surprise me if Alvin Kamara has like 100 plus rushing yards and then like 15 catches for some reason, because that's how the New Orleans Saints work. The Giants, I think Drew Lock starting, although I don't know. Either way, I don't think it's going to be enough against New Orleans. The team is weirdly good sometimes. The defense is weirdly good sometimes. Although New Orleans doesn't have the greatest run defense, so maybe they get a little something going on the run game. But if this game gets out of hand, they're going to have to abandon the run, the Giants, and it's just not going to be good for them. So I am going to take the New Orleans Saints. That being said, up next, we have Carolina at Philadelphia.
Look, Bryce Young's been playing good, but he does not have the weapons around him. Give me Philly here. Philly has been on a tear. Like I said earlier, they're probably the hottest team in the NFL right now. I think I'd pick them over any other team in the NFL right now, just based on the way they're playing. Saquon's having a career year, and Carolina has been giving up a ton of yards to running backs over the season. Bucky Irving just had his best game of his career against Carolina, and Saquon is going to do the same thing. So give me the Eagles. Should be a dominant win, blowout win in my opinion, and yeah.
I'm taking the Eagles. Bryce Young, he's had the most big time throws over the past 2 weeks, but the run defense for Carolina is awful. Saquon Barkley, he's going to have a minimum 150 this game, couple touchdowns. So, yeah, I mean, if you have him in fantasy or like those betting fantasies, like you're set up really good. The Eagles, even the run game, like Jalen Hurts can throw for literally like 4 passes and they're gonna win. Like Saquon Barkley is just gonna control this whole entire game. So I am gonna take Philadelphia. I don't think there's really any questions. Even though Bryce Young, Panthers have looked way better, I do think a win is coming for them though in the future. Up next, we have Cleveland at Pittsburgh.
Little bit of a rematch game here from that snow game we saw a couple weeks ago in primetime. I'd like the Steelers to get their revenge here. It's in Pittsburgh. We just saw Jameis throw the snow definitely played into their favor in my opinion, the Browns. So I think the Steelers will be better without the snow. They're more of a pass heavy team, and I think they'll be able to get their whole offense going um, in Pittsburgh. And I think We saw that Browns defense, they played decently against Bo Nix, but I think Russell Wilson, he's proven that he can beat any defense right now. Steelers are just winning football games. They're kind of like the Chiefs in a sense, as to where it seems like they always find a way to win. And I think they'll find a way to win. This is a big game for them. With the Ravens on bye, they can definitely take a huge lead in that conference. So a win for them would definitely be beneficial, and I think they'll get it done.
I'm taking the Steelers. Yeah, I mean, they lost that game against Cleveland in Cleveland, although I saw a stat they haven't won a game at Cleveland in like a couple of years, I think. So I think they're going to win this game. They're in Pittsburgh. It shouldn't be snowing. The Steelers are also expected to get Alex Highsmith back on defense, so that'll definitely help them out. This game, honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if this game is a high scoring game. We just saw the Browns put up a bunch of points. The Steelers, they put up 44 against Cincinnati. So this game, there's either going to be close to no scoring in this game or it's going to be high scoring. I'm leaning more on the high scoring. And as long as there's no snow, I think Russell Wilson and this team is going to be able to win this game pretty handily, especially if Jameis Winston turns the ball over a few times. Up next, we have Las Vegas at Tampa Bay.
I'm going to take the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It wasn't a pretty game for them against Carolina, but they got it done. It was a divisional game, big win for them. And the Raiders, I mean, they've just been trash all year. Give me the Bucks. Big game for Mike Evans. 200 plus yards to get back on track for another 1,000 yard year for him. So I think it'll be a big game for Mike Evans and the Bucks, and probably a blowout.
I'm taking the Bucks. Mike Evans needs to average, I think it was 95 or 97 yards a game to hit 1,000 by the end of the season. I think he's going to have a good game this game as well. We'll have to see how everything else goes. The Raiders, I mean, if your name isn't Brock Bowers or Jacoby Myers, like you're probably not getting more than a couple targets. I think Brock Bowers is going to have a big game no matter what, because he always seems to. Jacoby Myers should have a pretty decent game as well, but I think this Bucks team is just, the offense is just going to be a little too much for the Raiders. The Raiders, I want to say, have one of the worst, not actually, they have one of the worst defenses entirely in the NFL. So, yeah, it's going to be tough for them to keep up with them, although they did keep close tabs with the Chiefs, but I think that was because that was a divisional game. So I'm taking the Bucks. Up next, we have Seattle at Arizona.
I'm taking the Arizona Cardinals. I've kind of been a fan of the Arizona Cardinals the whole year. They had a close game against the 10-2 Minnesota Vikings, and I think that kind of proved that they can really compete with anyone. And they're a young team, and I think they're still figuring it out. But I think they get the win against Seattle. This game is in Arizona, so they don't have to play in Seattle, which is a plus for them. James Conner, I think, will have a big week, and Kyler will have a big week too. This offense is going to go off, and the Arizona defense has been improving as of late. And I think if they're able to shut down DK Metcalf, I think they have a real chance at winning this game. Should be a close one, but I think Cardinals will squeak it out.
I'm taking the Seahawks. I'm going on this, like I said a couple weeks ago when I picked them to beat Arizona. Kyler Murray does not play good against Arizona or Seattle for some reason. He hasn't won a game since 2020. It's going to be tough. When they played, granted it was in Seattle, but they didn't score a touchdown that entire game. So, and Seattle only won by 10, but they just had a big comeback win against the Jets. Gino played all right. I'm expecting Kenneth Walker to have a better game. JSN, I think, is going to have a big game as well. you want the cold elements as well, so that's going to help out both offenses. Trey McBride's going to have a good game, but the past couple of weeks, the Cardinals, for whatever reason, they played Seattle. Outside of the Jets game, even the Jets game, they did decent in that win, but the past couple of weeks, they really haven't had a run game. This team struggles immensely when they don't have a run game. So if they can't get the run established, Arizona, it is going to be a struggle, and I'm going to take Seattle. Up next, we have Buffalo at the Los Angeles Rams.
I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills. They had a great game on Monday Night Football. Josh Allen, I mean, he might have had a career game. It was kind of a crazy game for him in the snow. It was a classic game. I think they're going to be able to take care of business against LA. LA has been so inconsistent this year. One game, the offense is clicking. They got 200 plus yards, and then Stafford throws 2 interceptions and has a terrible day. So you just never know what's going to happen with the Rams, and I think Buffalo's going to be too much for them. They should be able to take care of business on both sides of the ball and ultimately win this game.
I think it's going to be a good game, but I'm taking the Bills. I think this is going to be one of those games where, I think it's going to be Puka Nacua, that guy who gets just like a ridiculous amount of targets for some reason. I think it's going to be Puka this game. Like, I'm talking like close to 20 targets. Stafford, look, we saw a not so great version of Stafford last week, but they squeaked that win out against the Saints. We'll see which offense we get from the Rams. Like, they're good 1 week, or they're good for a couple weeks, and then they look really like one of the worst offenses in the NFL. So who even knows what version of the Rams offense we're going to get? Buffalo, they've been on a roll. They haven't scored less than 20 points since their win against the Jets back in week 6 or 5. So they've been on an absolute roll. The defense is playing good. Josh Allen looking potential MVP candidate as well. And they have a pretty smooth run for the rest of the season. They got one game against Detroit, which we will see how they do. They beat the Chiefs. They've lost to the Ravens this season. So I think this game as well is going to test how good Buffalo is as well. But then the rest of the season should be a pretty good cakewalk. This game should be good, pretty decent as well. And I'm taking the Bills. Up next, we have Chicago at San Francisco.
I think this will be a really close game, but ultimately, the Bears are going to bear. They're going to find a way to lose. Give me the San Francisco 49ers. Like I said, should be a close game. San Francisco is very beat up, but it's at San Francisco, and the Bears, like I said, find a way to lose all the time. So give me the 49ers. I think Isaac Grendo will be able to get it done, and I think Purdy will have a big game. He was recovering from some injury that he had last week, so probably wasn't at the top of his game, but I think he'll get enough time to recover here and should be back to healthy. So I think the 49ers have the advantage in this game here.
I am taking the Chicago Bears. I know I think they're 0-5 in away games, but they got a new head coach. Maybe there's a little confidence in there. And I think, they're going to come out, new coach, or an interim coach at least, play their heart out. They're going to play good. If they just can't get off to a slow start. The thing that's been biting the Chicago Bears is they got off to an extremely slow start in the first half, and the second half, it's like they click, everything starts working, but it seems always a little bit too late. So as long as they don't start off this game super slow, I think they can win this. Purdy hasn't been the best this year at times. So, they forced a couple turnovers. We've seen this team win before this season by solely the defense carrying or keeping the game close. And I think it's going to be one of those games they just need to execute, play fourth quarters, and maybe the head coach doesn't allow the Bears to bear. Sunday Night Football, we have the Los Angeles Chargers at Kansas City.
Give me the Chargers to hand the Chiefs their second loss of the season. Chargers have looked good. They have been a really good team, solid team. Their defense has played good, and I think they match up against the Chiefs offense pretty well here. Chiefs have not played good football and are still winning somehow. And I think the Chargers are going to be able to win this game. I believe Pacheco's back, so he was back last week actually. So that might be a little bit of a hard task for the Chargers, but I think passing wise, they're not going to be able to get much done, the Chiefs. So I like the Chargers here, going with the underdogs.
I'm taking the Chiefs. Maybe the refs helped them, but like this Chargers team, last time they played, they only had 55 yards on the ground as a team. Now, they lost J.K. Dobbins in that Monday night game against the Ravens. And then this game, although they did win against the Falcons, the rushing game for LA did not look as good. And I think that's going to play a big factor, especially if we have a game like Justin Herbert that game only threw for 147 yards. So if the run game can't get going and Justin Herbert seems like he's bottled up in the pass game, I think it's going to be a close game, division game. Chiefs only won this game by 7 in Los Angeles, but this game's in Arrowhead. You lost one of your best players on offense, arguably. I think the Chiefs, they're going to find a way to squeak this game out, whether it's by 1 score, 2 scores, ref 89-yard pass interference to set up the game-winning field goal, whatever it may be. I think the Chiefs are just going to squeak this game out like they have been this whole entire season. Then we have the biggest Monday Night Football game of the year. Maybe not, but we have the Bengals at the Cowboys.
The Dallas Cowboys, their defense played pretty well against the Giants, but at the end of the day, I think it was just because it was the Giants who have one of the worst offenses in the NFL. Give me the Bengals. Their offense is going to be too much for Dallas. Let's just hope their defense can hold them to less than 3 touchdowns, and they should win the game. So, yeah, Bengals should win this game. If they don't win this game, I mean, that just shows how bad their defense is if they lose this game. So, give me the Bengals.
I'm taking the Bengals. I'm a little worried if they score more than like 38 points, then they might lose. But, the Bengals offense has been clicking no matter how good or bad the defense has been. And I think this game, is definitely closer if Dak Prescott's playing, but I don't think they're going to be able to keep up the Cowboys. The Cowboys aren't going to be able to keep up with this Cincinnati offense. And, it might be the Cowboys are going to put up points just because of how bad the defense is for the Bengals, but I don't think it's going to be enough to where they can, go mano-a-mano against the Bengals offense and Jamar Chase and everyone on that team. So I am taking the Bengals. Those are our Week 14 predictions. Let's go with, who do you have for an auto lock this week?
I think my auto lock is the Eagles against the Panthers. I really think this could be the biggest blowout of the week, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's probably the safe one. I'm gonna go with, to make it different, give me. This might be a little bit of a weird one because it's a divisional game, but give me Miami over the New York Jets. I think, it's in Miami. it's going to be warm or, not under 45 degrees. And the Jets, they played good until they fumbled. They just didn't play good in that second half last week. And it kind of just seems to be the Jets' story. So give me Miami in that game. Moving on to fantasy football. I lost by 10 points because Darnell Mooney did not show up last week. Let me pull this up. Yeah, 2 of my players did not show up.
I put up 133 points, but my opponent put up 167, so I just kind of got cooked.
Yeah, I mean, that is crazy.
Unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my tight end and my flex just didn't do too good. Otherwise, the rest of my team was solid. I also did some bet drafts, which I will pull up right now. One of them, where is NFL? One of them, I won $40, but that was mainly because I pretty much had 4 Buffalo Bills players on the team, and they scored a lot of points. Josh Allen and Brock Bowers carried. The other one, I won $19. Barely. Actually, yeah, I barely placed in that one, so that was a little sketch. This week, though, I'm projected to win in our league. I forgot where the matchup predictions were. I think I'm projected to win by like 64% or something.
Let's see. I'm projected to win. But my opponent has Javonte Williams and Tank Dell in, who are both on buys, so to be determined. Odds might change a little bit.
Yeah, this one's a little closer now. I'm projected to win, though. He needs to get a quarterback off the waiver wire this week, though. Maybe a defense as well. He's got the Cowboys defense in currently, and he has Bo Nixon at quarterback, who is on a bye week. So I'm going to assume my opponent is going to get a quarterback, potentially get a defense. I have the Denver defense this week on a bye week, but I was smart and I picked up, I think this was a smart play. I picked up the Philadelphia defense on Sunday, I think, during the games. So I'm going to put them in over Carolina, or in against Carolina. They're projected to give me 6 points. The rest of my team, I'm not sure if I'm going to change anything. I'm a little unsure if I want to switch tight ends. So I might not, just because the Packers are facing Detroit. And I might switch my flex as well, although I'm not sure, because Minnesota has not been good against the pass or wide receivers in fantasy this year. So I might, actually, their projected is worst. So I might keep Darnell Mooney, and I think he comes for a bounce back game. Now, I need you to take a listen to these. So I have one draft bet. This is my team. First team is, I got Sam Darnold, Kamara, Breece Hall, Puka Nacua, JSN, and Jonnu Smith. Now, how this works is you're in like however many it is for the draft, and then you draft against those people, but then you're playing against everyone else who joins the quote-unquote contest. So I think that's a solid team. Obviously, I wanted Saquon, but everyone that got the first pick got Saquon. And then the other team I have is Josh Allen, Aaron Jones, Kenneth Walker, Drake London, JSN on this team as well, and Trey McBride. I feel like those are solid teams. Now, it's a little different Receptions are only half a point, so I need touchdowns pretty much to be in a solid spot.
Yeah, those teams sound pretty solid. Um, I'm making for fantasy, I'm making two changes. Um, I'm gonna try to add Isaac Grendo. I'm assuming I'm not gonna get him, but figured I'd try. Um, Try to grab him and drop Cedric Tillman. And then I'm also adding the Cardinals D and dropping the Packers D. I think it'll be a pretty low scoring game between Seattle and Arizona, so I'm taking the Cardinals D there. And yeah, that's about all my moves for this week.
I'm a little tempted to pick up Nick Westbrook Akini. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. I mean, this guy, he hasn't caught a. I forgot his stat line. He's caught a touchdown on 40%, I think, of his catches this season, which is ridiculous. So this guy's just a touchdown merchant if he catches a touchdown, obviously. So maybe. I don't think I'm going to make any waiver wire moves, though. You know, someone might pick up honor league Dalton Kincaid. He's still questionable, so I don't know if he plays or not. But, you know, maybe that's someone will pick up as well. But, yeah, I'm just a point in the league where I'm just winning for moral support. I'm 4-9, and I still have more points scored than I've given up. So that just kind of is a summary of how my season has gone. Just unlucky matchups, I would say.
Yeah, I've had a pretty great season of fantasy. I'm 10-3, and I've scored way more points than anyone else in the league. Just solid all overall season for me. Nothing to complain about. Yeah, that's how my fantasy season has gone. 1,740 points for and 1,540 points against. Pretty solid margin there. Next closest person to me has 1,634 points scored, so I lead the league by points scored and over 100 points, and I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I wouldn't say but I lost the season when I drafted Trevor Etienne. And the icing on the cake as well, trading away Terry McLaurin. You know, I will forever regret taking Trevor Etienne over Derrick Henry when I had the option to. And I will officially not be drafting Trevor Etienne next year unless, you know, he's like in around 29 or whatever the last round is. Moving on, do you have a fun question or shall we do an immaculate grid?
I do not have a fun question.
All right, we will do an immaculate grid as I pull it up. I do have a question, not for today, but I do got a question the week we are going to do it on that week of Christmas. I think we're going to do that episode live on Monday. We'll have to figure out everything, but I think that's when we're going to do it. I have a question for that week though, so it should be a fun one. It's kind of like the Thanksgiving one almost. Let me now share my screen. Obviously, you're listening to podcast mode. You'll just be pretend to visualize this, but we have. Can you see it? You can see it, right?
I cannot. I don't know where it is.
Check the stream share.
I'm watching it, but it's just black.
Is it just black? No
Yeah.
way. Oh crap. Wait, where'd it go? Okay, hold on. Okay, so that worked. Let me try this. All right, did it work this time?
No. Let me refresh, see if I can get it.
Okay. I don't know why it's not doing that. So for some reason, if this does not work,
Still nothing.
Okay. Well, technical difficulty. So we will just skip the Immaculate Grid this week. I'll have to look into that and see what the issue is. And hopefully we'll fix it for next week if we don't have a question. But that's going to be a wrap on this episode, ladies and gentlemen. Week 14 is coming at us. Last week for bye weeks, and the playoff race for both the AFC and the NFC is getting closer. You know, we're starting to figure out what teams are eliminated on their quote unquote last breath, needing, you know, just a miracle in order to get into the playoffs. And, you know, teams that are legit playoff contenders have some big games up ahead, you know, potential playoff matchups we're going to be seeing in the regular season. But we got a big week 14 ahead. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you guys check us out live on twitch.tv/KnockdownNico or twitch.tv/Pr3ssix when we do the episodes live every Tuesday. If you are watching over on YouTube or in podcast form, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss out on when the next episode is uploaded. But thank you guys for tuning in as always, and I will see you guys in the next episode.
Peace.